Hello and welcome to another episode on the YouTube channel. My name is deancothill and really wonderful to be with you wherever in the world you're watching. Today, 3 things that I cannot live without when it comes to editing in Lightroom. The first one is the lifting shadows in the presets. The second one is the white balance stopper. And the third thing is having a look at the highlights or the saturations or the hues of the colors that we want to identify and pick up on in a particular image. These are the 3 foundation blocks when it comes to creating presets of your own and wanting to get a particular look and feel on your images. Let's dive straight into Lightroom and have a look. And so we've jumped straight into Lightroom Classic, and I've selected 4 images that I think are going to be really fun to just play with around some of these 3 key ideas in these 3 tools. The first one is we're going to have a look at our presets, which you find here on the left hand side. You're going to scroll down to where you find curve. You're then going to have a look at the lift shadows curve. And you're going to see something very special happen to these images at the push of a button. What is really happening here is it's the curve that is slowly being adjusted here in your tone curve. And at the push of a button here at lift shadows, which is this guy over here, you're going to see that happen. If you have a look at these images, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lift shadows. I'm going to go here, I'm going to lift shadows. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to lift shadows. At the push of a button, you can see that the images have been given this film-like feel to them. One button, easy little pro tip hack, lift shadows, and you're good to go in terms of the first little foundational building block when creating your own presets. The second thing that I'd like to touch on is this little white stopper, this kind of water stopper white balance selector. And if you have a look over this side, this is going to show you what the image is going to come out as. Now remember, we're creating or wanting to develop our own presets. Now if I start running this little tool over here, the tool is asking me to find the whitest part of the image. What you'll begin to see as I start to go over what is white, you'll see that that'll slowly reflect on this side. The moment I start saying, yeah, this over here is white, can you see how the image on the left is starting to compensate and needing to go as blue as possible if this over here was what's white? I'm going to say as we go into this little editing tutorial, that over there is going to be my white. Can you see how the adjustments have started to happen on the left hand side? If I go over here and say that over there is white, it's going to be a little bit more blue because the target neutral over here is actually more orange. If we go down here, the target neutral is okay, but I'm going to start to see the greens and the blues come out here. So what I might do, and remember we're creating and wanting to develop presets, you're going to want to start to see which tones you want to play with. So I'll probably move that up a little bit like that. On my temperature, I'm going to keep the tint on -5 for now and we'll move forward. The next one, we're going to do the same thing. And I'm going to look for the whitest part of this image. And can you see already that the moment I go to this being white here, on the left-hand side, it almost loses all of its color because it doesn't actually know what to do with some of those colors. So the moment I step into where I think white is, the color actually panics a little bit. So I'm going to do that for the sake of this illustration. And can you see that the blue, the temperature is all the way down? The moment I start moving it up a little bit, you'll see some of that color come back. But the tint has gone to +6. We're going to do the same thing here very quickly. And we're going to select our white. We're going to say there, for example. And we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to find our whitest piece and I'm going to say that it's that color over there. And can you see the gray image on the left hand side that has kind of been pre-made for us as I begin to try and target my neutral white in this image. And I'm going to say that it is there. That is pro tip number 2. The last thing that we're going to do, and before we get to exposure, before we get to highlights and shadows, before we get to any of this stuff, is we're going to go down here and begin to play with which colors we want to highlight as we begin to develop our presets. Now here already immediately the colors that I want to focus on are these oranges that are in the fire, the oranges that are in the sunset. And so before we even get going, you want to come here and you want to start playing with which colors you want to identify. Can you see that at the scroll of one little guy over here, you're beginning to change some of the tones, and you're starting to have a look at what's happening in the highlights and the shadows. You're then going to, even in saturation, I really for the most part start when I've identified my color, which you can see up here, your main color there being red and yellow. And now this is actually our exposure. You can see here it's our exposure. You want to bring that up a little bit, which is going to affect it over there. It's the same little block, as you can see. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just drop some of the saturation, drop some of the saturations there. And that gives us a better feeling on that image. In the next one, we're going to do the same thing. It's going to be give or take the same colors on the fire that was on that sunset. And remember, we're wanting to develop presets here. So we're just playing a little bit with some of the colors that we want to focus on when we're wanting to curate a particular look and feel on our social media, on our digital media platforms, whether curating galleries, whatever it may be. Similarly, now it's going to get a little bit colder because now we want to identify some of the blues. And so we're going to have a look at what begins to adjust here as we begin to play. And you'll very quickly see that those blues, as you can see here, go to exposure again. You'll see that we are dealing with the blues here. But the blues there go a little bit down. We kind of go into that aqua teal color, and similarly there. Once again, remember, we don't want to do too much. We're creating presets and we're just adjusting some of the colors. You want to bump up saturation and make that, or you want to bring in some grays on the blues. So for fun and games, I'm going to bump up my saturation here a little bit. And then the luminance, you're going to see all of a sudden what happens to the blues in the clouds as you begin to bump it up to lighten the blues or bring them down and darken them. And I'm going to do that as we go on all of them there. You can kind of see some color there in the horizon, but we won't focus on that for now. Similarly, what I'm going to do for fun now is I'm going to copy all of these settings and I'm going to bring it across to this image over here and see what happens to my blues. Already I've adjusted them as if it was a preset for the most part. What I'm going to do is have a look at the colors that are involved here, the blues and the aquas, and I'm going to just bump the exposure up a little bit there. Quite a lot actually, as I see that, plus 1.3. And you'll begin to see the colors come out to play here. Might just bring it down a little bit more and you're there. If you're happy, and we're going to say that this is the first preset that we would like to play with as a building block, please remember that this is surface level, level 1 or 2 almost, building blocks for how to create presets for yourself. You're then going to go up to develop, you're going to do new preset, and you're going to go, let's just call it Dean, YouTube, and we're going to go 001. You'll then see that you can go up to your user presets and you can go all the way down, and there is Dean YouTube 01. You're going to do the exact same thing with all of these. And you're going to develop, you're going to go new preset, and we're going to, for fun and games, call it Dean YouTube 002. Now you're in the process and now you're in the game of creating presets for yourself. You're wanting to see what happens when you start adjusting the colors in particular, and then you're going to want to develop and create new presets. As you begin to play and as you have a little bit of fun with some of these ideas and what some of the colors begin to do for you, you can then get into some of the vibrance, saturation, what it means to have a bit of more presence in your image. You're then going to have a look at exposures and contrasts, and even then begin to pull some highlights, add a little bit of shadows, say pull the whites and probably pull the blacks down a little bit like that. And there I'm really quite happy with a final product on an edit. And I would sit with something like that. I have done very, very little anything else actually, as we even move down some of these processes in terms of some of the color grading. I can get into that in another video. But I hope that you found this helpful as the 3 building blocks for what it means to create your own presets. And please hit subscribe if you would like to come along for the ride.